G'day and welcome to another big edition of the RDFNL Footy Show, looking back on week one of the finals. Thanks to McDonald's, my name's Yeendy. I'm joined by Tara Murray from the Star Weekly, and it's all been happening in the first week of finals, and with a few surprises, I guess, maybe with the results.
Well, I tipped all three winners, so the results itself not surprising. I think the way the games played out probably is. There was a couple of shocks there. I thought all three matches might have been pretty close, but in the end, only one close and two blowouts. Let's
talk about the close one on Saturday afternoon out at Romsey Park, and you got a chance to see Masson and Ruperswood in action. Ruperswood led for most of the day, and then Masson come through like a steam train at the end.
It was especially the first half. The Sharks' pressure was really immense, and that was the difference in the game. Every time the Cats on ballers were getting the ball, they were under pressure. They weren't getting the space. Like, obviously, Dan Markworth had a lot of the ball early, but he just had no space to use it. We know his kicking is dynamite if he can get that into the Cats' forward line, but there was none of that. So, at half-time, the Sharks were up, and both teams had 10 scoring shots each, and the Cats were 1-9. But I didn't think the scoreboard was reflective. I thought on the other side that the Sharks should have probably been 2-3 more goals up. They were quite dominant and kept the ball in their forward half for a lot of the game. So that's how it was sort of the first half. And then after half-time, the Cats stepped up. So speaking with Jeff Andrews after the game, he said that the first half was their worst half of football for the year, and he sort of put it on the players at half-time, and they stepped up. You had some of those leaders who have been pretty quiet step up. Sean Harrison was one of them, Casey Somerville, Matt Knox got a bit more of the ball, and even Jason Cook, who got none of the ball in the first half. It was a combination of the ball not getting down it, and Jaden Muscat was doing a really good job when it did, so they put him into the midfield to start the second half, and he got a bit more of the ball. So in the end, the Cats ran over the top. The Sharks didn't score in that final quarter. They did have a few injured players as well, which didn't help, but in the end, it was just the Cats too strong.
Speaking of one of the big injuries, Dean Putt was a big talking point there with his, was it a hamstring?
I'm not sure whether it's a hamstring or a thigh, but it was definitely an upper leg injury.
So that's sort of plays a big impact for the rest of their finals campaign. There's a bit of bad luck there for the Sharks, so I think they still can take a few positives out of that performance.
Exactly. You had a few of the younger players step up. I thought Muscat did a really good job. You've got Lockie Muir had a lot of the ball, so you had quite a few players who...
The younger brigade have come through the juniors.
Saying that at the same time, you still have Brett Chambers and Brent Swallow were leading the way up forward, so the injury to Putt did change the game. Obviously, Putt is one of those guys who can match Tom Waters. There's not many in the league, so when he sort of, after half-time, he tried to play on. He played a little bit in the ruck, played a little bit in the forward, but was restricted, and sort of the injury came after he took a screamer of the mark. So in the end, the mark was a great mark, but in the end, probably did the Sharks' hopes damage.
Yeah, it's a tough game, which is good to have that good finals atmosphere. Now let's turn our attention to Sunday, and it was Armageddon, the weather front. It was just unbelievable, the rain, the snow, the hail, the full shebang. But I think the result that caught everyone by surprise was, I know you backed them, but Riddle beating Romsey, but the margin was incredible.
I thought it would have been a lot closer. You look, this final score was 96-22. So the Bombers started really well. They kicked 7 goals in the first quarter. So that sort of set up the game. And when they had the wind, and speaking with Jamie Elliott, he thought it was a 3-4 goal win. But it was more the second quarter when they still outscored the Redbacks, and the Redbacks had the win that really did the damage. So the match was sort of over at half time, and it's sort of in the wet conditions. It got a bit scrappy towards the end of the match, but it was a really, really massive win for the Bombers.
I was sort of a bit surprised about the result. I actually expected the Redbacks to probably win that one, especially with wet conditions. They can sort of play the game a little bit more on their terms, low scoring. But the Bombers, their pace and the young players kicking goals was instrumental in the victory.
It is, and I think they had 5 players kick 2 goals each. So you mentioned their young players, but they had a couple of their experienced players in Scotty Walsh and Ollie Mercedes kick 2 goals each as well. So you've got those guys, but probably Clark Oval with a little bit more of the open space may have favoured the Bombers, because the Redbacks are so good at Romsey Park, where you've got Clark Oval a little bit more room.
Yeah, exactly right. And the final game, which was the elimination final over at Romsey Park, they did see a fair bit of snow right across the day, and in particular through the senior game. We had Diggers Rest 2 strong for Sunbury Kangaroos, and while the scoreboard might have flattered the Roos in the end, the game was over at half time.
It was. Well, your Kangaroos didn't kick a goal for 3 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what game of the year, what time it is, to not kick a goal for 3 quarters, any team would be disappointed. So I think we saw the real Diggers Rest after we were all questioning a little bit after they lost to Macedon in the final round of the season, going, is this what we're going to see in the finals? But we saw the real Diggers Rest, and they really stepped up and took the game on. So in the end, the final margin was only 22 points. The Kangaroos kicked a few goals late, but disappointing result for the Kangaroos in the end.
Definitely right there, and I think that the big turning point of the game was when Jamie Lobb kicked a goal just before the halftime siren. That put the margin up to I think 5 or 6 goals. I think it was 6-1 to nothing at halftime. That was the big one, because it's different when it's 5 goals. That six goal margin all of a sudden in those conditions become a little bit more challenging. There was a bit of a breeze favouring the township end, and for Sunbury Kangaroos not to be able to score in that first term shows that how well the Burrows were playing.
It is, and I think the Burrows probably have a little bit of... want to send a bit of a message, because everyone's sort of been talking about Macedon and Rupert's Wood the last few weeks and saying they're the favourites, but you've still got Diggers West, who won last year's premiership. Most of their players either played in as reserves or a senior flag last year, so they've all got that experience, and it's shown through at the right time of the year. Definitely
the right time of the year. We've got plenty of great finals action still to come, and make sure you join us later on in the week as we get ready to dissect. We're going to throw two previews at you. We're going to dissect both games this weekend separately. Tara, thanks so much for joining us on the review of week 1. Thanks to McDonald, who's part of the show.
Thanks for having me.